I need to stop talking? Okay. So he said, I served many leaders who later fell down. And he said, some of the stuff you'll read about them is true. But let me tell you this. What happens is they stop chanting properly. And I saw personally. And when they stopped chanting, they started making offenses to devotees. I could see in the behavior. And then when they started making offenses to devotees, then the taste for everything dried up, and then a lot of these people went away. And he said some of them have come back, and now they're great devotees again. So the Vaishnava brought, even though it's so dangerous, and the elephant goes in the garden and destroys all the plants, but still the foundation is there for the garden. The land is still there. So in the same way, even though we might commit some Vaishnava aparad, and that can check for some time, still we are still spirit soul. We are still servant of Krishna. Bhakti is still so powerful that nothing can ever stop it permanently. And then Prabhupada goes and gives another example, which is less likely to happen to a conditioned soul, but there can be the arrangement of the Lord. Like he gives example Jai and Vijay. They offended the four Kumaras, and they got cursed by the four Kumaras to take birth in the material world. And then you find out that Krishna just wanted to fight. And he can't fight in the spiritual world, so he has to come to the material world and fight. So, they get the option, okay, do you want to take 7 births as my devotee or 3 births as my enemy? Okay, 3 births so we can return very quickly. And they did their roles as demons very well for those 3 births. So, but then we see that even, they returned back to their position as Jai and Vijay. They got their service back. And then sometimes we can fall into material attachment again. Maya is very strong. So Prabhupada gives the example here of Bilvamangala Thakur. How he was an exalted devotee in his previous life. And I looked this up further in preparation for this class. And it said that he had gotten up to the stage of Baba. But then later, he became attached to this prostitute. And very attached. He was like, no, I got to see the prostitute. And Prabhupada says, even when it was raining, he was like, no, I have to go out and see her. And he crosses this river and he holds on to a dead body and he gets to her house and the door is closed. So then he uses a snake to climbs up the wall using a snake and then jumps over and then finally gets up to see this prostitute. But this prostitute ultimately enlivens him because the prostitute is his guru from a previous life. And so actually Prabhupada told his disciples once, don't make me come back as a prostitute in order to get you. So the prostitute was his guru in a previous life and told him, if you had this much determination to serve the Lord, you would be a pure devotee. And of course, the story is a little bit longer than this. He actually stays there the night with the prostitute and she preaches to him. And then later he starts off for Vrindavan. And even when he's on the way, then he still sees a beautiful woman. So there's still this thing, but still he never gives up his determination. And ultimately, he makes it to Vrindavan and he becomes, this great devotee again. Just to give a more, modern day example, I've talked to several devotees that have said, that they fell into material attachment after years of practicing Krishna consciousness. And some of that, I've talked to devotees that have said, look, I gave up everything for 15 years, for 20 years. I stopped chanting. I stopped following the regular principles. Some people even told me, I joined another religion. I became a Sufi. Yeah, there's one Prabhupada disciple I know, he told me he became a Sufi for 15 years. Another devotee I know said she went back to Judaism for 15 years. Just totally gave up everything. Another couple I know said, me and my husband both left, and we fell so far low that we even stopped calling each other by our spiritual names. And the husband took a job, selling cigarettes in a convenience store and things like this. But see, here's the amazing thing is that all of these people came back. Because one person told me, even though I gave up everything, I couldn't give up listening to Prabhupada's lectures. So they were listening to Prabhupada's lectures. And one person told me, even though I gave up everything, still occasionally I was chanting Hare Krishna. I was chanting around on my beads here and there. And this one woman told me that after 20 years of not practicing, and occasionally chanting, Hare Krishna on her beads, she was just lying in bed one night and she said, I told my husband, I'm not much of a devotee, but I think I want to do some service for the devotees. And then she started serving the devotees. She had gotten this knowledge in naturopathic medicine, and she started serving the devotees in this way, not practicing, but just wanting to offer some service. And then from that, she then took back up Krishna consciousness. One guy fell so far down that his friend later got a book, and she wanted him to go to the temple with her. And he said, no, I don't want to go. I'm not doing that anymore. And she said, please, come on, I want to go check it out. Just go with me, and he said, okay, I'll go with you, but I'm not practicing it anymore. So he goes with her, and then people recognize him, and they're like, hey, so-and-so, it's been forever. Where have you been? He's like, yeah, I'm not really doing this anymore. I'm in my own thing. She wanted to come, so I was just accompanying her. And he's watching the artsy. And when he's watching the artsy, he remembers his previous service. And something about that arti revives Krishna consciousness within him, and then he takes it back up. And so it's like no matter how far you fall away, Krishna won't ever let you go permanently. And you won't be able to experience as much happiness in the material world because you've already experienced the satisfaction of Krishna. You're gonna be looking for that everywhere. It's like somebody told me once, when you go back into the material world, you can't really enjoy again. You can only pretend. So it's like that. So we can fall back into material attachment. And then sometimes material enjoyment can come. And material enjoyment is going to come anyway because we have a certain amount of material enjoyment that we are destined to experience and a certain amount of material suffering. So sometimes, material enjoyment comes. And this can be an impediment if we get attached to it. That's the danger. And so in the context here, Priyavrata Maharaj, he's worried because he's been practicing devotional service under the guidance of Narada Muni, being renounced, not being involved in material life. But then what happens is there's no suitable king. Because there was Uttanapad, then there was his son, and up into the Prachetas, everything was going nice. So he didn't have to worry about it. Because his brother was taking care of everything. His brother's line was taking care of everything. But after the Prachetas, there was no suitable king. So therefore, Swayambhuva Manu goes to Priyavrata and says, okay, somebody has to rule the world here, and, we need you to take it up. And he's worried, what's going to happen to my devotional service if I go back into worldly affairs. So his mind was in the right place. But we also see here that Lord Brahma comes with all these great sages, and he tells Priyavrata, Krishna has ordered this. So therefore you should go do this because this is the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he was acting under the order of his spiritual master and under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when we do that, we can never be lost. So he had, probably more material enjoyment than I'll ever get in my lifetime. King of the entire world. And in order to do that, he also had to take a wife because Prabhupada explains in one of these purports that Kshatriyas have to have a wife for encouragement in their duties. And also, a king has to set the proper example. Pure devotees don't need varnashram, but the rest of society does. Because not everybody's a pure devotee. So it's like one of the instructions Krishna gives to Arjuna. Even great kings such as Janaka, did their duty to set a good example for other people. So Priyavrata, he has to take up this duty of ruling the world. And, he's afraid of what's going to happen to his devotional service, but because he has practiced Krishna consciousness. He's had this taste. He's actually never going to go away. And that's what happens with all of us. Once you get that full taste of Krishna consciousness, even if, of course, this didn't really happen with Priyabhrata, but even if you somehow get attached to material enjoyment again, Krishna will pull you back. And also, there's a difference here in material enjoyment and material attachment. And this is why things like family life, things like having a lot of material enjoyment can become dangerous, because the material attachment can be there. So when we have a lot of material enjoyment, or when we get some material enjoyment, or when we take to family life, if we're not careful, we'll get attached. And attachment is different than love. Because with attachment, it's not about what I feel for this other person. It's about how this other person is making me feel. So, for example, with Bharat Maharaj, he got overly attached to a deer. So the deer wasn't the problem. But the thing is after he saves the deer, he becomes helicopter parent. You know, the deer, he won't even let the deer walk in the forest. He carries the deer so it won't get attacked by tigers. The deer has some itch. Bharat Maharaj scratches the itch for the deer. You know, he's doing his meditation and he can't find the deer and he's in anxiety. And he goes and looks for the deer. Why is he going to look for the deer? Because he's feeling anxiety. He's thinking, I'm the protector of this deer. And so this is the over attachment. And so when we become attached to a person, when we become materially attached to a thing, we are looking for some sort of peace, some sort of happiness, and how that thing or that person interacts with us. So if you're overly attached in family life, you want your spouse to say certain things to you so you feel good about yourself. Oh, you're so beautiful. You're so wonderful. Okay, yeah, I feel like a queen. Oh, you're so great. Okay, yeah, I feel like a king. You know, like this. So we can carry on with this illusion that we are Krishna. Or we get some sense of security, or we get some sense of, but ultimately Krishna can only provide these things. And so we look for these things in something other than Krishna. And that's the danger. And when we look for these things in something other than Krishna, then we have to take birth again and again and again. We're looking for other people to provide for us things that only Krishna can really give us. And yes, in family life, you know, we have a duty to try to protect our children, to, you know, try to protect our spouse, whatever. But we are not their ultimate protectors. Only Krishna is their protector. We are just fulfilling a role. But that same attachment, when applied to devotees, becomes auspicious. Because that attachment reminds us that, oh, I'm not this body. I'm spirit soul. I'm not a part of this material manifestation. So you see how it changes. I believe there's this verse in the Bhagavatam, you know, that the same type of attachment, when applied to devotees, it becomes auspicious. I can't remember where it's at. You know, but you think of it like a vaccine. You know, like yeah. So like a vaccine, you get in a vaccine for tuberculosis. They give you that vaccine has a bit of tuberculosis in it, but it saves you from tuberculosis. So the attachment, when applied to the devotees of Krishna, when applied to Krishna, then it becomes auspicious. But that attachment, when applied materially, it becomes inauspicious. It's like, I'm attached to my kid because my kid is an extension of my body. I want my kid to become a doctor, become a lawyer, because that will make me feel proud. We say it's because, oh, I want them to have good economic stability. Yeah, there's that, maybe that there too, but there's also within you, you want to feel good about yourself for how good you did raising them. So you're looking for satisfaction in something other than Krishna. So that's how it works. And even in Krishna consciousness, you know, like, if we're not careful, this can also happen. Oh, my kid has to become a devotee. But really, our desire for them to become a devotee is because we want to feel good about how we raised them. And we want people to look at us and say, oh, you did such a good job. Your kids are such nice devotees. But I remember once my Guru Maharaj told me, it's your job to give your son Krishna consciousness. It's his job to take it up or not. When I understood that, then I could actually love my son. Because I wasn't attached to how necessarily I felt. But I was thinking, okay, how can I best guide him? So that, he might be inspired. So then I was paying more attention to his needs and his desires and his wants and thinking, okay, how can I tweak this so that maybe he gets some attraction to Krishna? So when we don't have that attachment, then we can really love others. And so when we think of that in this way, this canto is not really a negative canto. It's more of an encouraging canto. Srimad Bhagavatam teaches you how you can really love everybody. And you can really love everybody when you're not looking for your own personal satisfaction in that relationship and how they interact with you or how that object interacts with you. But you see them as spirit, soul, and part and parcel of Krishna. So there's a lot more I could say, but I think I have to stop here.
Okay. So I just wanted to say how encouraging what you said is, because sometimes it can be easy to think like, oh, if you end up in a position where you're backsliding, it can be very easy to get down on yourself and very discouraged. But to hear you talk about all those other people who had, kind of backslid far worse than I have, and they were still able to come back, so that just gives me encouragement.
Yeah. And that's the ultimate message, is that Krishna's never gonna let you go forever. And you're not gonna be able to go away forever.
Okay.
Anything else?
Oh, Kirtaneshwar Garanga has something.
Yeah, Prabhu.
One devotee who comes here sometimes, and he tells a story. He doesn't live here, but he comes here once a year. So he tells a story how he was involved in Krishna consciousness. He became a Prabhupada disciple, and he was very, very, devoted. But actually, they actually tried to deprogram him 3 times, and he even had to meet with the Ted Patrick.
Oh wow.
And so he did. Ted Patrick kidnapped him for 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so he told me, that his parents, they were so against it. And so finally, after some time, they said, okay, he had a kid. And he said, okay, well, we want to have the kid in our life, so we'll accept you as a devotee. But then in due course of time, he completely left Krishna consciousness. He moved away from Dallas where he was staying, and he left. And so his parents, they were like wealthy, and they wrote him out of the will.
Oh.
He left Krishna consciousness, and he totally seemed like he blooped for years and years and years. And then in 2012, or around that time, my Gurudev, who was his friend from the very beginning, even before they were devotees practically, my Gurudev said, I'm going to come visit you. And then so because he had blooped, his parents wrote it back into the will, and they died. And they gave him all this money. And so then my Gurudev went and found him, and then he revived his Krishna consciousness. And the devotee said, I'm just going to try to chant 1 round a day. And if I can increase 1 a year, by the time I die, I'll be chanting 16 rounds again. But the first time he chanted 16 rounds. And he never stopped chanting 16 rounds. That was like over 12 years ago, or even maybe more than that. And then he ended up donating a big significant amount of that money to this temple and helping us buy out, pay for certain properties. So it's amazing how Krishna always has a plan, that he blooped, and his parents gave him the money, and then his parents died, and then my Gurudev came in, revived his Krishna consciousness, and then he gave that money to Krishna.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. That's a really good story. And it's a bit of an encouraging class, but an encouraging verse deserves an encouraging class. And also another thing I was thinking here is that, devotional life is so wonderful. That the amazing thing is that, you know, you see these devotees like Priyavrata and like Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj. And what's so amazing about this is that even though, you know, they had all this opulence, you know, at the end of their life, they were able to give it up. They were able to renounce it at the proper time, you know. And so the Bhagavatam, it teaches us, you know, what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And you see how it's so much different compared to like Dhritarashtra, who, you know, at the end of the Kurukshetra war, you know, he's still in the house of the Pandavas and he's still holding on and, you know, trying to enjoy some way and somehow, and he can't let it go. But you see great examples like Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj and Priyavrata, you know, and they were also kings, but you know, at the proper time, you know, they were able to do so much greatness as kings, but at the same time, when it was time to give all that up, they were able to give all that up. And that's the glory of devotional service, is that it's so sweet that even, you know, like when material enjoyment comes or when material suffering comes, you know, the devotee is really thinking, okay, my happiness is in Krishna consciousness, my happiness is not here. So therefore, you know, they're able to just give it up when they need to give it up, because ultimately, you know, my duty is to serve Krishna.
Well, it looks like Divya Mataji has something.
Well, I was just gonna say that, because of the Dura, Dasarath is finally good around.
I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, speak a little louder. Can you say that a little louder?
Well, Dhritarashtra, because of the Dura preaching to him, he actually did give it up.
Yeah, he had to have help.
Yeah.
He had to have help.
He didn't go back to Godhead. He didn't go back to Godhead though. He got liberated, but he didn't go back to Godhead because he was still, his offenses didn't allow him to go back to Godhead.
Right.
He did get liberated, but he didn't achieve the liberation that the Dura and the Pandavas achieved.
Yeah, that would have been a far cry after his life.
All right. Anything else?
I have one comment I can share.
Okay.
I've heard, you know, Devaki Mataji. She
Yes.
travels around German Mataji. In one of her books, she says that sannyas is only for the brahmanas, and that the kshatriyas and the vaishyas are recommended only go to the general person is recommended only go to the stage of vanapras. Meaning that they like we see in the case of Vaidarbi and the king in the fourth canto. Vaidarbi is the reincarnation of Puranjana, but then her husband, king of Vidarbha. That, you know, like there's so many examples of that too, where the husband and wife are together, but they're practicing Krishna consciousness in a detached way, just devoted to spiritual life. But I've heard that Shiva Maharaj also says that like sannyas is very rare, just kind of going out completely alone. So do you have any comments on that?
That, you know, I mean, I didn't know that. You know, what she's saying, you know, I didn't know that, but that you know, sannyas is more rare, but I do know that you know, with the whole practicing of Krishna consciousness, I mean, the ultimate thing, you know, no matter what the ashram it is, you know, the Vanaprastha ashram or the sannyas ashram, you have to be in the proper position to, you know, help you make advancement in Krishna consciousness. So therefore, you know, for the kshatriyas, I mean, if it's generally only recommended that they go to the Vanaprastha position, okay, but you know, the whole point is, you know, as long as they go back to Godhead, like Prithu Maharaj and his wife. So, but is this going to cut off at 9? Because there's something else I wanted to add to this class. I thought it was about to cut off earlier, so I wanted to make time for
a minute or two max.
Yeah,
okay.
I think a few minutes left.
Okay, so there was something I wanted to throw from the CC here. And because it talks about the sweetness of Krishna consciousness. And so this is from the Adi Lila. And it says, my dear friends, if you are indeed attached to your worldly friends, do not look at the smiling face of Govinda as he stands on the bank of the Yamuna at Keshigat. Casting sidelong glances, he places his flute to his lips, which seem like newly blossomed twigs. His transcendental body, bending in 3 places, appears very bright in the moonlight. So the purport here, Prabhupada is saying, this is a verse quoted from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In connection with practical devotional service, generally people in their conditioned life engage in the pleasure of society, friendship, and love. But this so-called love is lust, not love. But people are satisfied with such a false understanding of love. Vidyapati, a great learned poet of Mithila, has said that the pleasure derived from friendship, society, and family life in the material world is like a drop of water. But our hearts desire pleasure like an ocean. Thus, the heart is compared to a desert of material existence that requires the water of an ocean of pleasure to satisfy its dryness. If there is a drop of water in the desert, one may indeed say that it is water, but such a minute quality of water has no value. Similarly, in this material world, no one is satisfied in the dealings of society, friendship, and love. Therefore, if one wants to derive real pleasure within his heart, he must seek the lotus feet of Govinda. In this verse, Rupa Goswami indicates that if one wants to be satisfied in the pleasure of society, friendship, and love, he need not seek the shelter at the lotus feet of Govinda. For if one takes shelter under his lotus feet, he will forget that minute quantity of so-called pleasure. One who is not satisfied with that so-called pleasure may seek the lotus feet of Govinda, who stands on the shore at Yamuna, or at Keshigat, in Vrindavan, and attracts all the gopis to his transcendental loving service. So it's like, so this, I wanted to end on this, because this goes back to this, once you experience Krishna, you won't be able to find full satisfaction in everything else. And so, and also, when your relationships are based on Krishna, you love everybody more.